Hello and welcome to my first impressions of the anime Young Blackjack. Now before I start this video, I will admit I don't have very much experience with the Blackjack franchise. I haven't seen any of the other anime series and I've only read a little bit of the manga, which was in a random magazine that my parents got me when I was a kid. However, what I did read I enjoyed thoroughly, and when I found out that this anime was coming out and it was going to be a prequel to the original manga, I became very interested in it. The show is set in the year 1968, where Japan is experiencing a period of rapid growth. However, with this rapid growth has come a ton of problems, and there's been a significant increase as to the amount of youth protests that have been happening. And in the midst of all this chaos is a medical student named Hazumo, who later on becomes known as Blackjack. The story follows Hazumo as he aims to save as many people as humanly possible. In terms of his personality, Hazumo is very aloof and doesn't really care about what's happening around him except for when somebody's life is on the line. And when that happens, he springs into action and does whatever he can to save his patient. Unfortunately, it's not always that simple, as young Blackjack is set in a very volatile environment and Hazumo is constantly coming into contact with a lot of selfish, cold-hearted and cruel people. He's also constantly put in a position where he has to help these horrible people by performing surgery. And this brings up a very interesting dilemma. Does Hazumo help these people even though they have fairly shady morals, or does he simply walk away? However, if he does end up walking away, the patient he was meant to be operating on will most likely die, so that isn't good either. But if he goes ahead with these somewhat dubious surgeries, he could put his future as a medical practitioner on the line. There's no real right or wrong answers in situations like this, and because of this, these dilemmas ended up being my favourite part of the show. Hazumo is constantly arguing with other characters and within himself about what's the right thing to do, and I always found this really interesting. These kind of situations are also what made me really like Hazumo as a character. Even when put under these really difficult circumstances, Hazumo is still compelled to perform surgery because he doesn't want to abandon any patient. I found this extremely courageous and it made me really want to cheer Hazumo on. Along with Hazumo, we've also been introduced to two other main characters at this point in the show. We've got Yabu, a doctor who's turned to drugs in order to deal with his traumatic past, and Okamoto, an intern who works at a local hospital. I found both of these characters to be really likeable and they help contribute to the conversation about whether or not Hazumo should be performing these somewhat shady surgeries. While there's a ton that I like about this show so far, one thing that I didn't like is how Hazumo is portrayed as this prodigy that can pull off miracles even though he has no real world experience whatsoever. The surgery he performs in the first episode is apparently his first surgery ever. I just can't buy this. I can't buy that Hazumo could be as skilled as he is with no previous surgical experience. Now, what I think is gonna happen is that we're gonna get an explanation for this somewhere down the road. Maybe Hazumo has performed a ton of surgeries in the past, he just doesn't want to tell people about it. Or maybe as a kid he was experimented on, which gave him these amazing abilities. I hope we at least get some kind of explanation for this, because if he is performing these surgeries off his natural talent alone, that'll just be completely unrealistic for me, and I think my enjoyment of the show will drop significantly. Another thing that kind of put me off a bit was the character designs. Now, the original manga was written by the same guy who did Astro Boy, and you can tell because there's the same weird and unique character designs in this show as well. You've got the characters with the big noses, the weird hairstyles, and the really misshapen heads. The biggest problem with these characters is that they contrast heavily with characters like Hazumo and Okamoto, who have more modern character designs. Now I understand that it's necessary to keep the character designs from the original manga, because if they didn't and they changed everything, fans would be pissed. However, every time I saw a character with that kind of weird design, it broke my immersion completely, and because of that I found myself preferring the more modern character designs. Even though I had a few gripes with the character designs, I still really liked the way the show looked. The art for this show is really good and it also has some really great animation, especially in the surgery scenes. Despite the few gripes that I had with this show, I still really enjoyed it overall, and I'm definitely going to keep watching as I'm invested in the story and characters. If you would also like to watch Young Blackjack, it's available for legal streaming over on Crunchyroll. So anyway, thank you very much to everybody who watched this video. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment. If you like this video and want to see more, feel free to subscribe as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.